Good day and welcome to FDM, the channel dedicated to feather data models. Well, earlier today I looked at the impact of the global pandemic on US employment, and you may know that yesterday Stats SA released the latest electricity figures for March. So we now have a full quarter for this year, and March would have seen some impact of the pandemic on electricity in South Africa. So I was thinking, let's use that full quarter as a type of an indicator and construct a type of indicator model to see what the impact might be on South African GDP. Okay, so let me go to FDM. So what I did in FDM was to download electricity and GDP and model these two and use electricity to forecast one quarter, the next quarter of GDP. At the moment, South African GDP is published up until the last quarter of last year, quarter 4 of last year, and we now have electricity for the full quarter. So what I did was to set, just show you there, we've got the full quarter, first 3 months of the year, and what I did was to set the aggregation to sum. So I'm going to use the sum and use that. Could just as well have used the average, it would not make a difference, but use the sum and use that to model GDP. Let's first look at electricity. So if you look at electricity, we now have the full quarter. This is the monthly figures, and electricity was already under strain. Electricity was already struggling a lot, and if I look at the last quarter, there I see the figures. It was already under quite a bit of strain. Let's look at these two together. Let's look at electricity and GDP on the same axis. This is what happens. Now let's look at the figures quickly. So electricity, the third quarter last year was negative 7.4%. The last quarter was negative 6.1%, and the first quarter here we've got negative 4.8%. So it's actually doing quite a bit better than in the previous 2 quarters. So this just shows you how much strain this was under. There's a moving average of electricity, and you can see how it's really struggling at the moment. Actually, the most recent figures, if I aggregate them into a quarter, are looking much better than the quarter before that. So if I look at the actual figures, this is what we looked at just now. We've got the negative 7.4, negative 6.1, and negative 4.8. So that negative 4.8 actually looks a lot better than before. It looks like electricity is doing better at the moment. So that makes it difficult. Really makes it difficult to use it in this indicator model context. But I anyway went ahead and did that. Now, just to show you the model, what I did was to use the level of GDP in logs, and then the change in logs of the level of electricity supply, okay, or electricity produced in South Africa. So that's what I did, and that's how you should do it, right? In this model, I'm going to use 111 Arima model. So that will bring in a change in the log levels, and therefore I need to use the change in the log levels of electricity as an external or independent variable. Okay, so if I fit that model, this is the output that I get. There you can see the Arima model and the coefficient of the constant, the coefficient of electricity supply, and it's hugely significant. So this model says that if the electricity produced drops by 1%, then I will see a 0.1% drop in GDP. And there's the model. Now, what you see here is GDP, and the first. Let me just want to verify that quickly. So we are looking at GDP, and we are also looking at a 8-quarter exponential moving average of GDP. That's what this line is. That's what this line is. And you can see how far, even before the virus struck, that's the end of last year, fourth quarter of last year, you can see how much trouble the local economy was in anyway. If we fit this indicator model, you can see that actually it says that things will improve a bit in this quarter. In this quarter, from the negative 1.4% annualized that we saw in the fourth quarter, it goes to negative 0.5% annualized in the first quarter. So I think the conclusion then is that it's really difficult. It's really difficult to at this point, at this early point, especially in terms of the data releases, to see what the impact of this is on the South African economy. The South African economy was already in trouble, and therefore it's difficult to see the negative impact that the virus will have at this early stage. Especially if you look at something like electricity, which looks like this, where you know it, or that's the monthly one. Let me just go back to the quarterly one. If you look at electricity, where the early release, the fact that we've got a full quarter now, although that's negative 4.8%, right? That's actually much better than the 2 previous quarters. So it makes it difficult, and it would make it very difficult for policymakers to, at this early stage, to sort of gauge what the impact would be and to respond to that properly. Well, that's it for now. I'm waiting for the US GDP to come out, and then I'll do the same thing. I'll use the US GDP as an indicator model on the local GDP to sort of get an idea of what might happen going forward from here. But for now, that's it. Thanks. Goodbye.